Got some team members walking up before we get started, but I do want to say good afternoon to you all here at Press Pool. Want to thank you for being here. Won't hold you long. Come on up. Won't hold you long. I know the sun is coming out right when we get to the mic. But first, let me say good afternoon to everyone. I want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon on a topic that's very, very important to us, not just neighborhood revitalization, but our continued aggressive blight removal efforts. Um, as it has been stated since day one, and every day we'll continue to state this, neighborhood revitalization is our priority. But as part of the revitalizing and investing in our neighborhoods, the city is committed to removing blighted structures and enhancing public safety. Please recall in our amended budget that was passed in December, the city committed $1.5 million in demolition alone in this current budget. We're currently focusing on removing burned out structures throughout neighborhoods, like this one you see behind me here in Smithfield and in other neighborhoods throughout our city. Now, Chief Moon will speak in a minute, who leads the Birmingham Fire and Rescue Service. The city is currently investigating 104 fires just alone in 2025. Of those investigations, half of the structures are vacant, and some have had repeated incidents. Now, I do want to state that April, through April 25th, that is, I'm sorry, the city has completed demolition of 126 structures just this year. So if you do the math, that's almost at least one a day, because we're right at 120 days of the year since January 1. Again, we've removed 126 blighted structures in 2025. But this has been accomplished through a collective effort that includes contractors that have been hired by the city, our public works crews who will be demoing this site, as well as private property owners compelled to remove their blighted property. But in totality, since January 1 of 2018, the city has overseen the condemnation and demolition of more than 2,466 structures. Again, blight removal as part of our revitalization efforts is extremely important related to the continuation of the stabilization of our neighborhoods. The men and women you see to my left and right are leaders within their departments and divisions, but also in the trenches of making sure we continue to push this effort of blight removal in our city. So, with that stated, I want to turn the microphone over to Chief Moon, who leads the Birmingham Fire Rescue.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to first start by thanking Mayor Woodfin, City Council, and the team for putting an emphasis on demolishing these blighted structures. For me, it's a safety issue. Not only do these structures create a safety issue for the citizens and surrounding homes, they also create a safety issue for our personnel who risk their lives every time we have to respond to a structure fire. I want to give you a little bit of data about the house that we're standing in front of. So this house burned on March 26, 2025 at about 5:23 a.m. Our personnel arrived on scene and the house was well involved. This was a vacant structure. The investigation of this house is currently under investigation by BPD and our fire investigators. You heard the mayor give a couple of stats about some of the open cases that we have. We do currently have approximately 104 fires that are currently under investigation, and half of those, 52 of those fires, occurred in vacant structures. So the last thing I want to say is I want to thank BPD for our collaboration of working, and they continue to work to solve these cases. So I appreciate you.
Next up, Deputy Muller.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to the City Council. I want to take a moment to address the Birmingham Police Department's role and stance in reference to abandoned structures. Our police department has taken decisive actions to address illegal dumping, drug activity, and fires that surrounding some of the activities that go on at these abandoned structures. We've done that through targeted enforcement as well as operations. By working closely with the fire department, city leadership, public works, and other departments, we've been able to identify and mitigate these issues swiftly. We've increased our efforts through our proactive patrols at our known structures, thanks to the community as well as these other city entities that notify us when things are going on at these properties. This year, the Birmingham Police Department has made 8 arrests on several of these nuisance properties related to abandoned structures. We also want to thank the residents who provide the information that we need to be successful in solving these crimes. And we want to send a clear message to those who consistently take the opportunity to commit crimes surrounding these abandoned properties that we will investigate and you will be brought to justice. But once again, we want to end by thanking the community members for coming forward with the information and providing us with the information to be successful in mitigating some of these issues. Thank you.
I want to thank the chief. I want to thank Chief Moon. I also want to thank Deputy Chief Malden with BPD. Before we take any questions, I do think it's important to hear from a few more team members. One is Katrina Thomas, who leads the Permits Engineering Planning Department, PEP, City of Birmingham. Their team leads the condemnation process, as well as recall recently through our social channels, she shared beginning this week more about the process. The truth is, the City of Birmingham can't just go on private property and remove a blighted structure. There's a process, and I want her to just briefly explain that process to you as well as to our citizens.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, my name is Katrina Thomas, and I have the pleasure of serving as Director of the Department of Planning, Engineering, and Permits. And our department has been focused on trying to drive compliance by holding property owners accountable for clearing vacant properties and abating them. When they fail to do so, that's when we're able to step in and go through the demolition and condemnation process. That entails first finding out who the property owner is. We do that by conducting a title search to make sure that we are holding the correct property owner accountable. And then we give them a 30-day notice to abate the property by repair or by demolition and on their own efforts. We then allow for the City Council to place this item on the City Council agenda to declare these properties a public nuisance. And we see those properties on our council agenda weekly. After that, if the property owner does not comply after that, then we're able to go through our efforts to demolish the structure. As the mayor stated, we have been aggressive with these demolitions. Our goal has been to increase efficiency around our demolition efforts by making sure we have the correct software to be able to track compliance and make sure that we're handling these in a timely manner. We also are thankful for the coordination and efforts that we have with our Department of Public Works. And then we now have more contractors who are out being able to tear these structures down. And so our neighborhoods are vital to our quality of life, and we will continue to recognize these structures and get them clear. Our goal is to also hold the property owners responsible for paying us back for the costs that the city has incurred with taking these structures down. And so we are now going through a process by which we will be able to hold property owners accountable and foreclose on those properties that they refuse to pay those unpaid liens on. So we appreciate this partnership, and we know that there are other properties that are out throughout our city that are in need of demolition, and our goal is to get to those properties. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. It's one more important note, and that is the unfortunate truth is that a lot of absentee landowners, a lot of absentee property owners who have blighted structures hide behind LLCs. I wanted Ms. Nicole King, who leads the Office of the City Attorney, and they have a team within that department called DNAT. That's the Drug Nuisance Abatement Team, to come up and share a few words of how they partner with PEP and other departments to go after these absentee owners and some of those who hide behind LLCs.
Thank you. So, with the DNAT team, we work collectively with PEP, the Birmingham Police Department, and we have an in house investigator and two police officers where we actively investigate out of state property owners. And we are able to, when they are not able to be held accountable in lower court, such as municipal court, we are able to track them down and hold them accountable in circuit court. And we do give them notice, so they are on alert of the nuisances or drug nuisance activity that takes place on their properties before we bring that action in circuit court.
Thank you, Ms. King. Look, the residents of Smithfield and other communities around the city have been patient, but I think it's important that we, through every legal means, be aggressive as we can of removing these structures, particularly after they're burned. But there's still a process, and so we will continue. We will continue to move with much haste as fast as possible as we can to get these burned structures down. With that stated, want to take any questions you may have related to this topic. Yeah, a couple things. I think one, every dilapidated structure is not the same. But I think when you take this structure, for example, it is in literally walking distance of a school. As Chief Moon said, it becomes a public safety issue. And so I think at the point that it's actually burned, we don't want to create a situation where there's a repeat offense at the same site and or a child or adult can get hurt. And so we want to move with deliberate speed and declare an emergency if the law allows it for us to expedite the process of removing the structure.
Expand upon how you choose which is houses you're tearing down. I know this one was burned within the last few months, but there's some around the city that people tell us have been burned for years.
Yeah, that's a good question. Ms. Thomas, you or Artemis want to take the question about how a house is actually chosen to be demolished?
So we the our condemnation and demolition inspectors are out throughout the city looking at these properties. We also receive complaints through our 311 system, and once we identify the property and identify the property owner, then we can start that process. And in some instances, it takes longer to locate the property owner, so there may be some delays in some parts or steps in our process, but our efforts are citywide. We don't necessarily have a set location that we're just focused on. We have been focusing our efforts throughout the entire city. And so as the mayor stated, the burn structures, they do represent a safety, a public safety issue throughout our community. And so those can go through an emergency demolition process. But if there are other structures that are out there that have yet to be demolished, there could be some other issues that could be occurring with where we are in the process. But our goal is to expedite and be aggressive with as many of these properties as possible.
Yeah, I'm going to average cost.
So the average cost of a residential demolition such as this is about $4,000 to $6,000. The cost of construction and labor costs have increased lately, so we have been seeing some numbers upwards of 7,000. But that's around the average cost of demolition per structure.
So once this house is demolished behind us, it's certainly going to be an empty lot. Who has responsibility for that lot? And that's not city take responsibility for it. Or you have to make sure that doesn't get overgrown or anything like that. Like you see around all the
So, as the mayor stated, some of these property owners are absentee. And so, if the lot is not maintained after demolition occurs, then we take it through our weed abatement process as necessary. Again, our goal is to be able to eventually foreclose on these non owner occupied properties so that the property can eventually go in the hands of a person who would do right by them. Ideally, we would like to see infill development and redevelopment take place on these lots. But in the interim, the city will continue to step in as needed to address blight, even if it's an overgrown lot after the structure is demolished. it's still in the property owner's responsibility. That's correct.
Tell them there's a lien on the property.
We're still tracking that number. Right now is over 100, but we're still tracking that number. Now, in terms of the responsibility, there is a lien that is placed on the property. There's an assessment of the cost that's placed on the property. So the property owner is responsible for that cost.
Thank you all.
All right, everybody, thanks. So give us a moment, give us a moment to get this out of the way.